In the distant reaches of a galaxy unknown to human charts, a war raged across star systems and nebulae. The conflict had begun as a territorial dispute between two ancient civilizations, the humans of Earth's sprawling interstellar colonies and the Zorathians, an insectoid species ruled by a matriarchal hierarchy. For centuries, these beings had coexisted in uneasy peace, their territories divided by vast expanses of empty space. But when a rare mineral essential for both species' survival was discovered on a border planet, diplomacy crumbled into warfare. The Zorathians were led by Queen Zyra, a towering figure whose exoskeleton shimmered with iridescent hues that shifted with her emotions. Her presence commanded awe and fear in equal measure, not just among her own kind but also among the human forces who had faced her strategic brilliance in battle. Standing at nearly 15 feet tall, she moved with an elegance that belied her terrifying power, her multiple limbs ending in razor-sharp claws that could slice through battle armor like paper. On the human side, Captain Elias Voss emerged as an unlikely hero. A former deep space explorer turned military strategist, he possessed an uncanny ability to predict enemy movements and devise countermeasures that baffled even the most seasoned Zorathian commanders. His tactical genius had earned him the nickname Shadow Walker among his troops, though few knew about the personal cost of his leadership. Sleepless nights spent poring over star maps and casualty reports, haunted by the faces of those who had fallen under his command. The battlefield spanned multiple systems, with skirmishes erupting around mining outposts, orbital stations, and terraformed moons. Each victory came at a steep price, leaving behind shattered hulls of spacecraft and planets scarred by bombardment. The humans fought with desperate determination, knowing that defeat would mean the end of their expansion into the stars. The Zorathians, equally resolute, viewed the conflict as a matter of racial survival, their hive mind united in purpose under their queen's guidance. As the war dragged into its 7th year, a particularly brutal engagement took place near the binary star system of Kale 4. Human forces had established a crucial supply line through this sector, and Queen Zyra personally led the assault to sever it. The battle lasted for 3 days, with both sides suffering devastating losses. It was during this confrontation that fate intervened in ways neither species could have anticipated, setting events in motion that would alter the course of galactic history forever. Among the chaos of twisted metal and burning plasma, Captain Voss found himself trapped in the wreckage of his command ship. The once pristine corridors were now labyrinthine death traps of sparking conduits and zero-gravity debris. His enhanced combat suit had saved him from the initial destruction, but its power reserves were dangerously low, and several vital systems flickered unpredictably. Through the fractured viewport, he watched as Zorathian boarding parties systematically dismantled what remained of his fleet, their chitinous forms moving with predatory efficiency against the backdrop of exploding vessels. Queen Zyra herself descended upon the crippled human flagship, her massive form dwarfing everything around her. Soldiers parted instinctively as she moved through the corridors, her claws leaving scorched trails along bulkheads while her mandibles clicked in patterns that translated to victorious satisfaction. She had felt something unusual during the battle, a tactical maneuver so precise and daring that it momentarily disrupted her mental calculations. This anomaly drew her attention, compelling her to investigate personally rather than leave the final purge to her warriors. Voss heard the approaching danger before he saw it. The ship's structural integrity alarms harmonized with the rhythmic thud of something massive impacting the deck plates. He attempted to activate his suit's stealth systems, only for them to sputter and die, leaving him exposed in the dim emergency lighting. As Queen Zyra rounded the corner, her multifaceted eyes locked onto his position immediately. What happened next defied every protocol of warfare they had known. Instead of striking him down or capturing him for interrogation, Zyra froze mid-step, her entire body language shifting from predatory aggression to something more complex. Her antennae twitched erratically, and her normally cold, calculating gaze softened with an emotion that made Voss's breath catch in his throat. He had studied Zorathian physiology extensively, yet nothing in their documented behavior suggested what happened next. The Queen extended one delicate claw toward him, not in attack, but in what appeared to be a gesture of recognition. The moment stretched into eternity as they regarded each other across the devastated corridor. Voss's training screamed at him to fight or flee, but something in Zyra's posture held him rooted to the spot. She communicated directly into his mind, bypassing language barriers through some unknown psychic mechanism. The experience was overwhelming. Images of star charts, mathematical formulas, and strategic maneuvers flowed between them faster than conscious thought. He realized with startling clarity that she wasn't just reading his mind, She was sharing hers, revealing glimpses of Zorathian culture, their hive mind's collective consciousness, and something else, a profound loneliness hidden beneath layers of royal duty and species pride. When Zyra finally spoke aloud, her voice resonated through the chamber in perfect English, shocking Voss to his core. "You are different from the others," she said, her words carrying weight far beyond their simple meaning. "Your mind dances with patterns I have never encountered before." Around them, her warriors stood frozen, confused by their queen's unprecedented behavior. Voss struggled to process the situation. The enemy commander who had orchestrated countless defeats of human forces was now standing before him, speaking of patterns and differences as if they were discussing art rather than warfare. The tension in the air became almost palpable as Zyra continued to study him, her massive form radiating an energy that seemed to warp the very fabric of space around them. Voss noticed something remarkable. Despite her formidable appearance, there was an elegance to her movements, a grace that suggested intelligence and depth beyond mere military strategy. Their encounter had transformed from a simple act of capture into something far more significant, though neither could fully comprehend its implications yet. As Queen Zyra's massive form dominated the corridor, she issued a command that sent shockwaves through both her own forces and the remaining human survivors. With a single gesture of her claw, she declared the immediate cessation of hostilities in this sector. The human prisoners, already being processed for internment, were suddenly released from their restraints and allowed to regroup under Captain Voss's stunned supervision. None of her warriors questioned her decision, though many exchanged puzzled glances through their compound eyes. Voss found himself in an impossible position. His tactical mind raced through scenarios, each more improbable than the last. The Queen's actions defied every convention of warfare he'd ever studied. Yet when she approached him again, her intentions became clear through another direct mental link. Images flooded his consciousness, visions of ancient Zorathian ceremonies, rituals of claiming, and the concept of a prize of honor. In Zorathian culture, such prizes were not trophies of conquest but symbols of ultimate respect, reserved for beings who demonstrated exceptional qualities that challenged even the Queen's formidable intellect. Through this psychic connection, Voss understood that he had been selected as such a prize. Not just any warrior, but the first human ever deemed worthy of this singular honor. The gravity of the situation struck him like a physical blow. Acceptance meant abandoning everything he knew, becoming a permanent fixture within the Zorathian hierarchy. Refusal, however, carried its own consequences. The Queen's warriors might interpret it as an insult to their matriarch, potentially reigniting the war with renewed ferocity. As Zyra led him through the conquered human vessel, now strangely peaceful under her command, Voss observed how her presence affected both species. Human soldiers, who moments ago had prepared for captivity or death, now watched in awe as their captain walked beside the alien queen. Some saluted instinctively, while others reached out to touch his shoulder in silent support. The Zorathian warriors, in turn, treated him with a mixture of reverence and curiosity, their usual aggressive postures replaced by something akin to respectful observation. The Queen's chambers aboard her flagship revealed another layer of complexity to their situation. Unlike the stark, functional design of human warships, Zyra's quarters were a living organism in themselves, pulsing with bioluminescent patterns that responded to her mood. As they entered, the walls seemed to recognize Voss's presence, shifting colors in intricate patterns that mirrored the mental link they shared. Zyra gestured for him to sit on a platform that molded itself to human proportions, a small but significant accommodation that spoke volumes about her intentions. Through their continued psychic connection, Voss learned more about the responsibilities and privileges of being a prize of honor. It wasn't merely a title but a role that carried real influence within Zorathian society. Prizes were expected to challenge their captors intellectually and culturally, to provide new perspectives that strengthened the hive mind. The revelation that he might actually help bridge the gap between their species added another layer of complexity to his decision. Yet the greatest surprise came when Zyra, through their link, began to share fragments of her own experiences. The burden of leadership, the isolation of being the only individual mind in a collective consciousness, and a longing for something she couldn't quite articulate even to herself. As days passed in the peculiar limbo of their unique situation, Captain Voss found himself navigating an increasingly complex web of relationships and expectations. Within Zyra's flagship, he occupied a space that existed somewhere between honored guest and prisoner, though the distinction blurred with each passing hour. The Queen had assigned him quarters adjacent to her own chambers, connected by a living corridor that pulsed with soft, rhythmic lights. These accommodations, while luxurious by human standards, came with invisible walls of protocol and expectation that proved more confining than any physical cell. Humanity's reaction to his situation arrived in waves of encrypted messages from command. Official channels demanded his immediate extraction, citing regulations about prisoners of war and diplomatic complications. Unofficial communications from fellow officers and crew members told a different story. Messages filled with admiration for his courage, speculation about his true status, and cautious hope that his position might lead to peace. Some called him a traitor, while others hailed him as a hero. The division of opinion among his own people weighed heavily on Voss, especially during quiet moments when Zyra's presence wasn't filling his mind with new revelations about Zorathian culture. The Queen herself proved to be both mentor and interrogator. During their daily sessions, she pushed him to explain human concepts of individuality, freedom, and creativity, ideas that fascinated her but frequently clashed with Zorathian collective thinking. In return, she offered insights into the hive mind's operation, demonstrating how millions of consciousnesses could function as one without losing their essential selves. These exchanges often left Voss mentally exhausted yet exhilarated, as if his brain was being rewired to accommodate entirely new ways of thinking. Among the Zorathian warriors, reactions varied widely. Many treated him with cautious respect, recognizing the Queen's claim on him as something sacred. Others watched him with open hostility, their compound eyes tracking his movements with barely concealed suspicion. Particularly challenging were the young warriors fresh from the front lines, who struggled to reconcile their ingrained hatred of humans with their Queen's unprecedented actions. Several times, Voss found himself facing tense standoffs in the ship's corridors, where only Zyra's timely intervention prevented violence. Perhaps the most surprising development came from unexpected quarters: the ship's civilian population of Zorathian scholars and scientists. These individuals, less bound by military discipline, sought him out during sanctioned hours, eager to learn about human technology, art, and philosophy. Through these interactions, Voss discovered that the Zorathian society he had fought against was far more nuanced than military briefings had suggested. They possessed a rich cultural heritage that valued knowledge and artistic expression, albeit filtered through their unique collective consciousness. Zyra's own behavior evolved in subtle ways that kept Voss constantly off balance. Sometimes she would appear in his quarters unexpectedly, engaging him in deep philosophical discussions that lasted until their respective biological clocks demanded rest. Other times, she would observe him silently from the shadows of the living corridors, her multifaceted eyes reflecting light in patterns that seemed to express emotions beyond human comprehension. Through their developing bond, Voss began to understand that her actions weren't merely strategic or ceremonial. They stemmed from genuine interest and perhaps something deeper, something neither species had words to properly describe. The diplomatic implications of their situation grew more complex with each passing cycle. Human diplomats, working through neutral intermediaries, demanded clarification of Voss's status while simultaneously exploring potential peace negotiations. Zorathian traditionalists, meanwhile, viewed the entire situation as a dangerous precedent that threatened centuries of established protocol. Rumors circulated through both species' communication networks. Some claimed Voss was being used as a pawn in a larger political game, while others whispered about unprecedented cooperation between human and Zorathian scientific communities. During one particularly intense session, Zyra revealed a secret that changed Voss's understanding of their entire situation. Through their mental link, she showed him fragments of ancient Zorathian prophecies, visions of a time when their rigid social structure would need to adapt or face extinction. These predictions spoke of an outsider who would challenge the foundations of their society, forcing them to evolve beyond their current limitations. While she didn't explicitly state that Voss fulfilled this role, the implication hung heavy between them, adding another layer of pressure to his already complicated position. As the days stretched into weeks, Captain Voss found himself caught in an increasingly intimate dance with Queen Zyra that defied all conventional boundaries. Their relationship transcended the simple dynamic of captor and captive, evolving into something far more complex and emotionally charged. During their private sessions, Zyra began to lower the formidable barriers that separated her from her subjects, allowing Voss glimpses of her true self, the entity beneath the royal facade. Through their psychic link, he experienced flashes of her childhood memories, the weight of her responsibilities, and the isolation that came with being the sole individual consciousness in a sea of collective thought. The emotional connection deepened in unexpected ways. Zyra, who had always maintained perfect control over her expressions, began to display subtle signs of vulnerability around Voss. Her antennae would twitch in patterns that betrayed uncertainty, and her usually measured movements sometimes faltered when he approached too closely. During one particularly intense exchange about human concepts of love and attachment, she physically recoiled, as if the very idea caused her pain. Yet she returned to the subject repeatedly, pushing Voss to explain the complexities of human emotional bonds with growing intensity. Their physical proximity became charged with significance. When they met in her chambers, the living walls seemed to pulse with anticipation, responding to the heightened emotions in the room. Zyra would circle him slowly, her massive form casting shifting shadows that played across the organic surfaces. Sometimes she would reach out with a claw, stopping inches from his skin, as if testing the boundaries of their connection. Voss found himself mirroring her movements, drawn into an intricate dance of approach and withdrawal that neither of them fully understood. The Queen's courtship rituals, when they finally emerged, proved both fascinating and unsettling. Traditional Zorathian displays of affection involved complex patterns of movement and sound, but Zyra adapted these customs for her human companion. She would create visual symphonies with the bioluminescent patterns in her chambers, translating human musical concepts into light and color. Other times, she would recite ancient Zorathian poetry, her voice modulating through frequencies that resonated in Voss's bones, creating physical manifestations of emotion that left him breathless. Their conversations delved into increasingly personal territory. Zyra confessed her fears about leading her people through unprecedented change, while Voss shared his own doubts about whether he represented humanity fairly. They debated the nature of free will versus collective consciousness, each challenging the other's fundamental beliefs. Yet amidst these intellectual exchanges, something more primal developed, a mutual fascination that bordered on obsession. Voss found himself studying Zyra's every movement, learning to read the subtle shifts in her exoskeleton's iridescence that signaled changes in her mood. In return, she seemed to anticipate his needs before he voiced them, arranging their environment to suit his preferences in ways that felt almost tender. The intimacy between them created ripples throughout the ship. Zorathian servants began treating Voss with a mixture of reverence and concern, while human observers noted a softening in the Queen's previously implacable demeanor. Even the ship itself seemed to respond to their growing bond, its organic systems humming with patterns that neither species could fully explain. Yet for all their progress, a fundamental barrier remained: the vast gulf between their species, their cultures, and their ways of perceiving existence itself. One evening, as they sat together in her private garden chamber, a lush, bioengineered space filled with plants that thrived on both oxygen and methane, Zyra made a declaration that shattered their carefully maintained equilibrium. Through their psychic link, she transmitted an image so powerful it nearly overwhelmed Voss's senses. It was a vision of them standing together on a world that belonged to neither species, surrounded by creatures that were part human, part Zorathian, a future that defied everything either of them had ever known. The implications of this shared dream hung between them, unspoken yet undeniable, marking a turning point in their relationship that neither could ignore. In the wake of Zyra's profound vision, Captain Voss found himself grappling with possibilities that stretched the boundaries of both human and Zorathian understanding. The Queen's proposal, delivered through their psychic link with crystalline clarity, suggested not just a union between two individuals but a merging of species that could redefine the future of both civilizations. She envisioned creating a new caste of beings who would embody the best qualities of both humans and Zorathians, individuals capable of existing comfortably in both collective consciousness and independent thought. The practical challenges of such a union manifested immediately. Biological compatibility between their species seemed insurmountable, requiring genetic engineering on a scale that made human cloning technology look primitive. Zyra revealed that her scientists had already begun theoretical work on adaptive DNA sequences that could bridge the gap between carbon-based human biology and the silicon-protein hybrid structure of Zorathian physiology. The ethical implications alone were staggering. Creating life that belonged fully to neither parent species raised questions about identity, belonging, and the fundamental nature of consciousness. Beyond the biological aspects, the social and political ramifications threatened to destabilize both societies. Among the Zorathians, traditionalists viewed the proposal as heresy against their rigid caste system, while progressives saw it as a necessary evolution. Human factions split similarly, with some viewing it as the ultimate betrayal and others as humanity's chance to transcend its limitations. Diplomatic channels buzzed with frantic negotiations as both species struggled to process the implications of this unprecedented development. Zyra and Voss worked tirelessly to address these challenges, spending hours in deep discussion while their respective scientific teams collaborated on solutions. The Queen introduced Voss to the Zorathian concept of adaptive resonance, a state where two consciousnesses could merge temporarily to create something greater than the sum of its parts. Through careful practice, they began experimenting with extending the duration of their psychic link, gradually building toward the possibility of sustained mental fusion. Each attempt left them physically and emotionally drained, but brought them closer to understanding what true interspecies connection might mean. As their story unfolded across star systems and through communication channels, it became clear that the union between human and Zorathian represented more than just a personal relationship or a political alliance. It symbolized the potential for growth through difference, for strength through diversity, and for evolution through challenge. The future remained uncertain, filled with both promise and peril, but for the first time in recorded history, both species faced it together, their fates intertwined in ways that neither could have predicted when the war began. The culmination of Zyra and Voss's journey manifested in a series of events that would reshape galactic history. Their daily interactions had evolved into something far beyond mere diplomatic negotiations or scientific collaboration. The resonance chambers they had helped develop now hosted regular sessions where human and Zorathian minds could safely explore shared consciousness, leading to breakthroughs in understanding that neither species could have achieved alone. These sessions revealed startling truths about the nature of awareness itself, suggesting that consciousness operated on spectrums previously unknown to either civilization. Zyra's transformation became particularly evident in her leadership style. The once imposing queen now conducted council meetings in hybrid formats, alternating between traditional Zorathian collective decision-making and human-style debate and discussion. Her antennae, once rigid with authority, now displayed more fluid patterns of movement, indicating a mind constantly processing multiple perspectives. She implemented reforms throughout Zorathian society that encouraged individual initiative while maintaining the benefits of collective consciousness, creating a new social order that respected both traditions. Voss, too, had changed profoundly. His tactical mind, once focused solely on warfare, now applied its analytical prowess to problems of cultural integration and species evolution. He coordinated human responses to the changing situation with a wisdom that came from direct experience of Zorathian thought processes. His ability to translate complex concepts between species became invaluable, earning him respect from both humans and Zorathians alike. The resentment some humans had initially felt toward him transformed into admiration as they witnessed his dedication to building a better future for all. Their physical relationship developed unique characteristics that defied conventional understanding. Through careful experimentation, they discovered ways to synchronize their biological rhythms, allowing for shared experiences that went beyond mere physical proximity. Zyra's exoskeleton responded to Voss's presence with patterns of iridescence that seemed to reflect his emotional state, while his own physiology adapted to subtle environmental changes in her presence. Scientists from both species studied these phenomena, uncovering evidence of previously unknown biological mechanisms that suggested evolutionary potential neither species had suspected. The political landscape continued to shift dramatically. Joint human-Zorathian governance structures emerged, with representatives from both species collaborating on matters affecting their shared future. Treaties were rewritten to account for the new reality of hybrid consciousness, establishing legal frameworks for beings who existed in multiple states of awareness. Educational systems evolved to prepare young minds for a world where traditional boundaries between species and consciousness no longer applied. Scientific breakthroughs accelerated at an unprecedented rate. The combination of human creativity and Zorathian efficiency led to discoveries in quantum mechanics, artificial intelligence, and biological engineering that revolutionized both societies. Particularly significant was the development of adaptive consciousness interfaces, devices that allowed individuals to experience and understand perspectives vastly different from their own. These technologies promised to eliminate misunderstandings at their root, fostering deeper connections between beings of all kinds. Yet the most profound impact remained the personal transformations occurring throughout both species. Individuals who had once defined themselves purely by their species' identity now found themselves questioning fundamental aspects of existence. Art, music, and literature flourished as new forms of expression emerged, blending human emotional depth with Zorathian geometric precision. Philosophers from both backgrounds collaborated on theories of consciousness that challenged everything previously accepted about the nature of thought and awareness. As they stood together on the observation deck of Zyra's flagship, watching as their peoples worked side by side on projects that would have been unimaginable during the war, both Queen and Captain recognized that their journey was far from complete. The road ahead would undoubtedly present new challenges, but they faced them with a confidence born of experience and a bond that transcended species boundaries. Their story had become more than just a tale of two individuals. It represented the dawn of a new era in galactic history, one where difference was celebrated as strength and unity emerged from diversity. The observation deck's transparent walls displayed a panorama of stars, each one representing possibilities yet to be explored. Zyra's massive form stood beside Voss, their shadows merging on the deck in patterns that reflected their intertwined destinies. The future they had helped create stretched before them like the infinite void of space itself, filled with unknowns, challenges, and opportunities for growth that neither could have imagined at the start of their extraordinary journey.